Hello, dear passengers. This is your captain speaking, and we are about to take off for another episode of Adventurina. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another travel dose, another episode of Adventurina, your loyal travel buddy. Somehow, it's already April, like mid-April, and as much as I can believe it, next month is my birthday. And it feels like it was just 6 months ago when I was celebrating it, and it's time to do it again. It's pretty surreal, if you ask me, but yeah, time flies. And last year, I spent my birthday in Chicago, and I truly loved my time out there. I have mentioned before on the podcast that for the last, I believe, 10 years, every year for my birthday, I either do something I've never done before or I go somewhere I've never been before, or both. Well, this year, I get to keep the tradition, and I'm doing both. I'm going to Canada on a cruise. I am super excited. This is going to be my first cruise and my first Canadian visit, so it's unnecessary to say how excited I am. The cruise departs from Los Angeles and arrives in Vancouver 6 days later. Funny thing is that there is only one stop on US soil before reaching Canada, and this stop is San Francisco. And since I live in San Francisco, you bet your ass I'm not leaving that ship at all once it arrives in my city. Like, I'm going to take my time and explore that baby, that ship, while everyone else is exploring the city I live in and I know so well. I think it will be funny to arrive at the place where I live by water, because I'm sure the experience of sailing under the Golden Gate Bridge is amazing. I have done it before, but with, way smaller boats like ferry style, so this one will be too different and exciting. And another funny thing is also that I actually live 10-15 minutes away from the cruise terminal in San Francisco. So if God forbid I forget something for my trip, I can simply get off the bus. I can simply get off the ship, run home literally and get it. After San Francisco, the next port will be Victoria in British Columbia, Canada, and then the last stop, Vancouver. We are going to stay there for a few days and explore the city. And it kind of feels weird because we're about 3 weeks, actually less than 3 weeks away from the trip, and I have not prepared shit about it. I mean, yes, we have the cruise reservation, which includes the whole experience and, of course, the accommodation, food. We have flights to LA and back to San Francisco from Canada, but that's it. And I realize there's not much to be planned, well, except for, Victoria, where we have a day, and Vancouver, where we have a few days. I mean, anything else, since it's a cruise, it's pretty much taken care of. And I don't know if I like this or not. Because I'm so used to planning that going somewhere without a plan makes me feel weird and like I haven't done my homework, There's a whole app of the cruise company we're sailing with, and there is an option to, explore the activities and put a calendar together for your days. So I guess that's gonna be the planning. I assume it may happen even when we get on the ship. So we literally will not have anything planned before that. Because yes, this is, not really a destination trip. Well, at least not the first 6 days. We will be stuck in a good way on that ship, so not much to plan. Plus, part of me kind of wants to, experience going somewhere without an itinerary. I think a cruise is a perfect time to try that. I'm not gonna lie, as excited as I am, a tiny little microscopic part of me is a little freaked out. Maybe not really freaked out, but a little anxious in a way. I mean, we all have watched Titanic, for God's sake, and I'm usually not paranoid. Well, unless it's, about my luggage, which we all know. But I don't know, I can't help but think about Titanic. And, let's not be a buzzkill, or let's just think of the experience as something new and unique, I would say. But if anyone wants to share, how their first cruise went, if anyone wants to comfort me a little bit, please hit up my DMs. Let me know how your first sailing was, but only if your experience was good, okay? If it wasn't, maybe don't text me. Just kidding, but maybe not. Anyway, guys, on a serious note, My trip to Bolivia is still something I constantly receive questions for. I'm honestly amazed how much interest this destination sparked in my audience and my followers and my family and friends and everyone. And even over the last week, I still got 4 people sending questions in about Bolivia. And since I still owe you guys the first argument in Spanish story, I think I can dedicate the rest of the episode to more Bolivia stories and also to answer as much questions as possible and to, make my listeners happy and help whoever wants to go to Bolivia next. So let's get into it. Okay, I know in the previous episode I promised you guys a story, an experience I had at a food place in Bolivia. So here's what happened. We were at La Paz bus terminal early in the morning waiting to take a bus to Copacabana. So we arrived, we were starving, and we went to one of the food places and started ordering. Turned out that from 10 or 11 items they had on the menu displayed, they barely offered 1 or 2 from the food options and most of the drinks. Which was a bummer, but we were so hungry and we were about to travel for 4 hours without knowing if food was going to be available until we reached Copacabana, so we just wanted to eat anything. We ordered an empanada, that just needed to be heated up. It wasn't something that was going to be made at the spot. A coffee that usually takes a couple of minutes to be made. I ordered a slice of cake, classic for breakfast for a sugar psychopath like me. And a traditional Bolivian drink called tohori, which is pre-made and you just need to pour it in a glass. We ordered, we paid, and we sat on our table and waited, and waited, and waited, and waited, and I'm not even joking. It had been about 20 minutes already, and there was no sign of a coffee or empanada or a cake or anything, and more people came and went, ordered and waited, ordered and ate, and there was just no logic. Like, people who came before us would still be waiting for their food, and people who came late after us would just get their food immediately, eat, and leave. And it was clear that something was ridiculously wrong with this place. Time was passing, and we almost had to board our bus. The people at the counter didn't look like they, were in a rush at all. And we just decided I will go downstairs and we'll make sure the bus doesn't leave without us, while my boyfriend will talk to them and, rush them so he can take the food. He speaks Spanish, so it was going to be way easier. And we needed the food. As I mentioned in the previous episode, our first day in Bolivia was so long and tiring, and dinner was definitely not enough and not filling, so we were both starving. I went downstairs and, left him to wait for our food. And a few minutes later, he comes and he's only holding the coffee. And I was like, what happened? Where's the food? I was already foreseeing a very long, hungry, and cranky bus ride. And he said, well, it wasn't ready and I had to leave. I didn't want us to miss the bus. I was like, did they at least give you the money back? He was like, no, fuck that. They didn't. I just wanted to leave. I was afraid we were going to miss the bus. And I got very angry because they should have offered him the money back, After more than half an hour. Like, if you're not gonna give me my food, fine, but don't take my money. And it's not really because of the money, honestly. It's because the principles. Like, you just can't do that, especially when it's your fault. If you had experienced some difficulties with, like, the kitchen or the cash register or anything, you should have let your customers know and just, refunded them. And I told my boyfriend, hold my stuff and make sure the bus doesn't leave. And I ran back to the food place. I was so pissed because they clearly took advantage of him being nice and not wanting to, confront them, on top of that being in a rush. So while I was running towards the place, which was on the second floor, I was kind of practicing in my head what I was going to say in Spanish. At the same time, I didn't really know if I could say a lot because, yes, I am taking Spanish classes and I have the base, but this is, I think, more advanced that I believe I know. So I got to the elevator and there was a girl going up with me. I was like, hey, do you speak English? She was like, yeah. And I said, can you please help me translate something in Spanish? And I quickly, explained to her what happened, but she was like, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm American, I don't speak Spanish. And I'm like, that's right. My question should have been, do you speak Spanish? Not, do you speak English? I guess I wanted to check if she could understand my request in general. So, anyway, I got to the food place and there was a guy right in front. I could tell he had been waiting for a long time himself. And I asked him for help as well. Turned out he only speaks English too. And then I was like, you know what? Fuck it. It's now or never. And I guess my anger just gave me some courage and confidence because I don't know how, but I just saw the guy from the food place, and I immediately said, Señor, un momento por favor. Esperando 30 minutos. Tengo que ir. Mi bus go. Quiero mi comida o mi dinero ahora. Which means something like, Mister, one moment please, I've been waiting for 30 minutes, I have to go, my bus is leaving, I want my food or my money now. And how I put together these sentences, I don't know until today. But I guess I didn't even have time to think or to realize how I should put myself together and make them, you know? The guy tried to pour my drink, the one that could have been poured like more than 30 minutes ago. Because yes, it would have taken him 10 seconds for him to grab the bottle from the fridge, put it in a glass, and just give it to me. Because as I said, it was a prepared mix in the fridge. So I was in front of him, pissed. He poured the drink and still didn't give it to me. And I was standing there and I was trying to understand why the goal of this place was to lose absolutely every single customer. Like, after he took 30 minutes to pour that drink in a glass, he still left it far away from me and still didn't handle it to me. Then he started trying to scoop the cake that was part of our order. You know, after 30 minutes, he was finally prioritizing our items. There were 2 slices left in the small fridge, I vividly remember. And the guy was trying to divide them in a really weird way. He was trying to divide them so he could give me, you know, one of the slices. But they didn't want to separate. And I was like, dude, just use the spatula you're holding and separate them first, then scoop, you know, one of them from below. Like, it's just, it's common sense. And instead of using the spatula to cut them, he kept making some weird moves and like shaking something, and he couldn't divide both pieces. And I was almost convinced that this was on purpose. I just couldn't believe that someone cannot have such little common sense. First, you already poured the drink. Why are you leaving it inside the kitchen instead of giving it to me? Like, you see that I'm pissed, but you still delay everything, even if you have the chance to give it to me. And second, it's a cake slice. It's not rocket science. A kid could separate those 2 pieces, you know? I was literally at my limit already. I could feel that the bus was going to leave any moment without me, and there was no other bus leaving in the next few hours. So I just remember saying, Señor, por favor, mi dinero ahora. And my head was just pulsing. I was imagining, you know, the bus really leaving. He turned around, started doing the math, and all of a sudden he said, here's 38.50 because your boyfriend took the coffee. And he said it in English. And I was like, what? Like, this whole time, you could speak English and you saw me struggling to express myself and you never said a word. But now, when you're refunding me, you're talking to me in English. I was like, I was over it, whatever. At the same time, I was like, he didn't seem to understand or remember anything from the order. But he did remember that my boyfriend took the coffee already. So, you know, the whole thing was so weird. So I grabbed the cash and ran downstairs like a maniac. The bus was almost leaving, so we got on it almost like the last moment. And I strangely was a little proud of myself, not just because I didn't let someone charge us for something we didn't consume, but also because, you know, I had the courage to go back and stand up for myself, even in a language that I'm still far away from fluent in. And I'm not a mean person. I never, you know, look for conflicts, or I never argue with like people from customer service. I worked in customer service myself for almost a decade, so I know very well what is it to be on the other side. But just the lack of communication and the lack of care literally brought me to this part, to have to not yell at someone, but to be obviously frustrated. But anyway, it was time for our bus ride, and yeah, there was no food, and we knew it. It was gonna be a shitty ride, but at least we made it. At least we didn't miss the bus. And here's the moment to mention. I don't know how many good qualities I have as a person. You know, I'm not the one to say, I don't know. But if there is one quality that I know I possess, this is always being prepared with food. Is that even a quality? I don't know. Well, after multiple cases throughout my life with delayed flights and weird situations at airports and, train or bus stations that prevented me from eating, I learned for myself to always carry some kind of snacks with myself. Sometimes, even in a small purse on my way to the bar, I don't care. I may get hungry, I need to have something. And of course, that was the case that day too. I had some snacks that we couldn't finish on the plane, and of course I took them. I never leave those behind for the exact same reason. I know I will need them later at some point. So for everyone who judges people who always take the leftovers from a plane, we don't always do it because of, I paid, it's mine, I'm taking it. No, we take it because these leftovers sometimes save your life. Not to be over dramatic, but yeah. Snacks like this have saved me multiple times in so many situations, and they have also saved people around me. Like, I will never forget how during a work trip, we ended up in our Airbnb in Dallas with more than 50 minutes delivery time for our food, and we were starving and exhausted. Everyone was super upset because of the wait time until I pulled out some crackers that honestly had been in my purse for way longer than I would like to admit, but boy, the enthusiasm these crackers were received with. You should have seen the people. Like I gave them a gourmet dinner. I'm telling you guys, the crackers themselves were nasty. They were so bad, so bad. Dry, extremely dry, not just because of the type of the peanut butter, but because of the fact that they had been in my purse for months. But no one seemed to care or to have preferences. The important thing was that we had something to eat until the real food arrived. The small airplane pretzels and cookies that I usually would not eat if I had options are such a blessing when they are the only thing you have while waiting, at immigration, for example, because often immigration lines get huge and you never know how long you're going to stay there. You thought you were going to be eating your meal already, guess what? You're not even close to the officer. And guess what? There is no food around either. And even if there is, you can't leave the line because you're going to lose your spot. So you better hold on to these small snacks. They always come handy. Just like the infamous bags of M&Ms that have saved me at least a couple of times from completely losing my mind because of being hungry during flights. Anyway, I opened my bag and I served the breakfast on the bus. Cookies, chips, and pretzels. At this moment, this was a real happiness, guys. After the snacks, we felt good and overall pretty rested, ready for Copacabana. We got some decent amount of sleep the night before and we were ready for 3 days at Lake Titicaca. The ride was amazing. We saw so much on the way there. The mountains were so beautiful, still snowy on the top. And once we started getting closer to Titicaca Lake, the views became more and more gorgeous. I, in general, love, water. I love being surrounded by water. Any water view just makes me happy. The whole road was so picturesque. We had to cross a small part of the lake with a boat because there is no other way to go over. This place had no bridge, so passengers get on boats and the vehicles are put on barges and sail separately. It was so interesting to me, to look at our bus just passing the lake on something that looked so unstable and unreliable. I was a little concerned because all of our belongings were in the bus. Most importantly, the passports. And this is probably the first and last time when I leave my small purse behind on a bus. The thing was that it takes not more than 15 minutes to cross the water for the bus because, it moves slower. And everything inside was safe as the bus was empty. Well, I wasn't concerned that someone, could take my belongings or steal them. I was concerned that the bus may sink. But anyway, we arrived at Copacabana and checked into our hotel. And I can safely say that I am absolutely serious. This accommodation in Copacabana was without a doubt the most amazing place I've ever stayed in. And let me tell you why. I am not a luxury travel bitch. You guys should know me at this point. I almost couldn't care less about my accommodation. What I want from it is to have clean sheets and hot water and the ability to lock the door, period. I have stayed in very nice places. Yes, I like it, but I don't need the crazy amenities that come with those places and that some people look for. Nothing wrong with that, just not my type of traveling. And with that said, I'm absolutely 100% happier with a cozy, small, nice place with a nice balcony, view, for example, rather than a big ass penthouse that looks like a scene from an aristocratic movie. I don't know. So when I say that the hotel we stayed in Copacabana was without a doubt the best accommodation I've stayed in so far, I mean because it wasn't luxurious, but it was cozy, unique, quirky, and still very spacious, and even came with some amenities we didn't expect. The whole design of the hotel complex is so unique. Each cabin has its own style and interior. It looks like a fairy tale. It's magical. You guys should look it up. I found this place from a girl on Instagram who had visited Bolivia before me and had shared some really useful tips. I will forever be thankful to her for sharing this hotel name. I most likely wouldn't have found it if it wasn't for her, honestly. I don't think that there is more beautiful place in Copacabana. People literally would come and walk around the hotel even if they stay somewhere else just because of the view. The view of the lake was phenomenal, and there were even llamas walking around. Each cabin had a private patio area and gigantic windows where you can just enjoy the sunset from. It was amazing. And with an accommodation like this, I wouldn't even mind, staying there for the whole time and enjoying the view from the couch. But we all know that this will never happen. So off we went to explore Copacabana. I really love this small, charming town. It kind of reminded me of some coastal towns in Bulgaria during the summer and their streets. So funny. We walked around, had lunch in one of their traditional restaurants, checked out the plazas and the biggest basilica, some parks, the beach, the main street. It was awesome. On top of that, we happened to be there during a festival weekend. They was still going, and we got to see so much without even expecting. And isn't that the best, to go somewhere and to have no idea that you are going to witness something super cool and traditional? And I loved it. Everyone was having fun. People were dancing and drinking literally the whole day until maybe 11 p.m. if not later. We got to see some traditional rituals. We got to see everyone chewing coca leaves and keeping them in their cheeks. We got to see real native people in their, natural environment, and it was super cool. Weather was nice, hot most of the time. Everything was so colorful. Souvenirs were everywhere. We were surrounded by chulitas. The chulitas are women who come from the Aymara or Quechua cultures. I hope I pronounce it correctly. They are descended from indigenous people who traditionally speak either the Aymara or Quechua language. So they look similar due to the specific way they dress, from the hat to the skirt and the cloth on their back. The chulitas are such a huge part of the Bolivian culture. It was really interesting to look at them. On our second day in Copacabana, we got on a boat and sailed for almost 2 hours to Isla del Sol. This island is believed to be the birthplace of the Incas and the birthplace of the sun god. We were planning on checking a couple of places on the island and then hiking from the north part to the south part. I had read already that this is the most popular route, and it's totally achievable for a couple of hours or a little more. Once we got off the boat, it turned out that the boat driver, the captain, would actually be our tour guide for the first half of the day on the island, which I didn't even know was part of the ticket we bought. It was very cool because I thought we only had a ticket for the boat. Now we had a tour guide, and it was amazing. So we hiked from the little port all the way to the north part of the island. Lake Titicaca got its name from the Aymara language, where Titi means puma and Caca can mean rock. So this phrase refers to the sacred carved rock found on the Isla del Sol, and also to the shape of the lake from above, which some locals see as resembling a puma. And this specific rock with the puma shape, we got to see on the northern side of the island. It was very cool. At first I couldn't tell if it looked like a puma, but in a little bit I noticed the similarities. The views while we were hiking were amazing. So much beauty surrounding us from everywhere. Once it started getting hotter, the moron I am, realized that we forgot the sunscreen. The sunscreen, the thing that I had about 4 reminders and alarms for, the thing that everyone was emphasizing on not forgetting there. The sun was starting to get very strong, but at the same time, there was wind almost constantly. So I had my shirt on top of my shoulders, which, yeah, it kind of protected my shoulders and back, but oh boy, the little skin patches that were exposed, despite me covering with my shirt, got so sunburned. Like my arms looked like red vines candy, but thicker. You know this candy? I swear it was the same. They were fucked up, and the skin on my hands, like top of my palms, was so burnt that it looked like a skin of an old lady, like wrinkled really bad. And the thing that I didn't expect was for my lower lip to get sunburned. I'm not even joking. Like, my lip was so messed up, you guys, for weeks. Like, there were some things leaking off it. It was gross. It took weeks before it got back to normal. Like, I would literally fall asleep with a healed lip, and I would wake up with blood on the pillow because it got chopped somehow during the night. Like, what? So, has anyone else experienced lip sunburn? Like, I need to know. I mean, I know there is a sunscreen for lips specifically, but was that a sunburn only, or it was combined with an infection? I don't know. I was confused. So guys, let me know. Text me if you had similar experience. Make me feel better if you have experienced the same, please. Anyway, back to Iowa. So burning was in progress. We were exploring the ruins in Chincana Labyrinth, and it was interesting, despite, the burning part. We even washed our faces and arms and legs with water coming from one of the rocks. The guide said that it was an old ritual for you to do so. He gave us so much information and even made us all gather around one of the rock tables where he explained that the Incas would meditate and channel their energy all together. So he wanted us to take a moment and kind of try to recreate what the Incas were doing. And, immediately everyone was on board and got close to the table, putting a head down and touching the surface of the table. But there were 4 guys from the group. They kind of pretended that they didn't hear him. The tour guide just, tried to call them one more time. And they were literally 7 or 8 feet away. But they were turning their heads around and they were avoiding eye contact. They just pretended they couldn't hear him. He was like, hey guys, you want to come join us? We're going to recreate this ritual. And they were completely ignoring him. And I was like, if you don't want to do it, you can just politely say, we're okay, thank you, start without us. Or something like this. But to stand there in front of another 15 people waiting for you and to not want to participate without even giving us a slight sign of, attention, it was just rude and stupid. And they were Europeans. I'm almost positive which country they were coming from, or at least I know the region. And before you come for me, I come from Europe too. So it's not like I'm talking shit about Europeans. I know Europeans. I'm a European myself. So I just couldn't understand why you would join this tour and take advantage of the whole information you were given, but then act like you're better than anyone and it's kind of under your level to participate in something like this. It's not like the guide made you convert from Catholics to Muslims or from Christians to Buddhists. It was a simple ritual to be recreated just for the sake of the tour. But anyway, those guys were weird. I think they just used the tour guide to see the direction and the cool places that they weren't going to find by themselves. On top of that, sorry, I don't want to be judgmental, but they were wearing pants that people usually go to the office with, and shirts similar to office shirts, and shoes that you go to formal events too. I was like, do these people even know where they are? Who the hell goes on a hike with office clothes and shoes? I'm trying not to judge, but it was just so weird and obvious that I couldn't help but notice how much they struggled because of the way they were dressed. I also didn't like the way they disrespected the tour guide. They could have said, no, thank you, but ignoring him just wasn't the way. And I'm sure they didn't even pay for the tour, which was basically just tip as much as you want. Okay, moving on. Here's the moment to mention that this part of the island, the one that we were at, is in a different time zone than the rest of the island and Copacabana where we were staying. Technically, part of northern Iowa del Sol is in Peruvian time zone, so 1 hour behind. Once our official tour ended, everyone left and we started our hike, all the way to the south side by ourselves. According to everyone, this hike should take about 2 hours. It turned into such a weird experience for us that I honestly, until today, have no idea how much time exactly this shit took us, and I'll explain why. When we started, the sun was already very high and strong, and it was basically the hottest part of the day. The hike goes up for a very long time, and let me remind you that you can't really rush or move fast because you're still fighting the altitude. Bolivia and a lot of places in South America have really high altitude, so it's lack of oxygen, it's very hard to breathe, and you need to pace yourself. It's not even recommended for you to hurry or run or anything like that. So we were taking our time. We would take breaks often because, of the heat and also because of the way we were running out of breath due to the altitude. On top of that, there was zero shade because there were no trees anywhere. So we didn't have a single moment in shade for hours. And remember, no sunscreen. We were taking our time and I noticed that my phone was being funky. Like I would take a look at it and it would be 1:40 p.m. And then in a few minutes, it would be like 2:50 and I couldn't understand. At some point, I think I just lost idea of what time it was. And we knew we had the whole afternoon. So we knew the hike takes about 2 hours, but we felt like we kind of overcame the hardest part and we were getting close to the south part, but I think that's just what we felt. I guess it wasn't close to the truth. I was checking the offline map on my phone and we were on the right track, and there is actually only one track. You literally cannot get lost. It's just one way. But damn, it was so hot and there was no end of this hike, I swear. I freaked out a few times that we maybe, messed up the trail, but there was really no other way. There was nowhere else to go. It was impossible to get lost. There were barely 4 or 5 people we met throughout the whole hike, so we didn't feel very confident at times for sure. And the big surprise on this isolated and literally deserted hike, I would say, was the few people who were selling food and drinks along the way. I gotta say, I've been at some really popular places where finding food and drinks would be impossible because there are no vendors. And at this place, to be able to buy water or some snack, it was like a dream. There were some small houses here and there, more like a room actually, like just room built type of thing. And they were offering food, some sandwiches, even homemade cakes and drinks, and it was awesome. Towards the end of the hike, we spotted this guy and got a full breakfast from his place. It was very cool to be in the middle of a hike, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing, but to have this little vendor, next to you, and to be able to eat a sandwich and a banana bread right there, I gotta say. It was amazing. So yeah, having this gorgeous view and having food that was just cooked for you was just an amazing experience. So we were approaching Umani, the town which designated the southern part of the island. We knew that the last boat back to Copacabana was at 4 p.m., but we wanted to take the one at 3 p.m., just a little earlier. Little did we know that it was already 4 p.m. No idea. Goddamn phone was acting crazy. So we thought we were gonna reach the Templo del Sol, which is another big tourist attraction, which we saw from the boat approaching the island earlier in the day. We thought we were gonna go walk, check it out, and then get on the 4 p.m. boat the latest. We just didn't know that it was already 4 p.m. Yes. The phone was still on Peruvian time because of the time we spent on the northern part of the island. And then once we arrived in the southern part, it immediately changed. We had missed the last boat. We just didn't know it yet. We were so happy that finally, after so many hours, still can't figure out how many exactly, after so many hours in the biggest heat, we had arrived. After 10 long miles uphill mostly, after no shade, we had arrived. So we started, walking towards the port so we could take a boat back to Copacabana. The road was a little messed up, and despite having the offline map, I felt like I needed to ask someone. There were almost no people around, but we finally asked someone, and they confirmed that, we're on the right path and the port is about 10 minutes walking down. While we were walking down, there was one guy who we met, and I just felt the need of, one more confirmation that this is the right way to the port. I asked him and he said, I vividly remember understanding even in Spanish that the last boat had left already and there were no others. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? What time is it? And then I took a look at my phone and I saw the time had changed with 1 hour ahead. I was speechless and I was like, what the fuck are we going to do? Like, my mind was racing. I was like, should we walk to the other port where the temple is? Are they going to have more boats? Should we get a room for the night and, go back to Copacabana tomorrow morning? Would we make it on time for our bus to La Paz? Like, my thoughts, crazy. So after the guy said that there were no more boats and we should just go to the other port about 15 minutes away by walking, we immediately left and walked as fast as possible, desperately, trying to get on the last boat from the other port. And while we were almost running and, discussing between each other what happened and how we got tricked, some tourists who walked around us heard us and asked if we needed help. And that's why I love people. Like, sometimes I hate people, but sometimes I also love people. They could have just passed, but they actually asked if we needed help, and I really appreciated that in this specific moment. So we explained to them what happened, and some local people got involved in the conversation too, telling us that the boats from the other port, the one that we were walking to, had sailed already too. So it was pointless to go there, and it's better if we just go down to the initial port we were planning on going to and ask for a private boat. And at least we knew that that was an option. I honestly didn't care how much we have to pay because I wanted to get to Copacabana. I wanted to spend our last night there in the amazing hotel that we had. This place was so unique and charming that I didn't want to stay anywhere else. I wanted to be there. So for a brief moment, we weren't sure what to do. Do we walk to the other port just to see that the boats there had sailed too? Do we trust these tourists? Do we go back to the first port and miss the boats that were actually still running on the other port? It was a hard choice. I didn't know what to do. It kind of felt like no matter which way we go, we will always end up losing. Then we got convinced by the last local people we met, and we decided to just run back to the first port. And we were literally running. It was so hard to hurry on these stairs all the way down. Oh my God. So here's the moment to mention that when we were in a rush to the other port before we met those tourists, we passed a souvenir store. And then it hit me that I still hadn't gotten my magnet from this island. I was like, fuck, like, if you're an old Adventurina listener, and if you have heard the pilot episode, you know that my magnet collection is something I take very, very seriously. So when we passed the gift shop on our way to the first port before we met the tourists, I was like, damn, that's gonna be the place that I really won't be able to get a magnet from? Damn it, like, I just cannot go back. We literally don't have a single second to waste. Like, I cannot stop for a magnet. And I almost made peace with it, But then, when we met the tourists and when we decided to turn back and walk back to the first port, my psycho-travel brain got alerted with the thought, okay, maybe I can run ahead and get a magnet. So then, I'm a bad person, but I'm gonna share that, fuck it. I told my boyfriend that I needed my portable battery because my phone was dying and we needed the map for, reaching out the port. The truth was that I wanted to take my wallet because I wanted to run ahead in front of him and buy the magnet and not waste time so he's not pissed that I'm buying a fucking magnet when we are almost having to stay at an island because we missed the transportation. So I'm not the one to blame if we miss even the private boats. So I was like, yeah, I need my portable battery. I pretty much got my wallet out of his backpack without him even stopping because we didn't have a second to waste. And I got the portable battery so it looked believable. And I got my wallet and I told him I'm going to run ahead and get a magnet from this place, and I swear I will meet you there once you reach the store. He was like, he just said, are you serious? With a voice that I know very well. This is the voice of you're fucking crazy, but I'm not gonna say it out loud. And he was right. I mean, this was very, very out of line. This was something that it just wasn't the right moment, but I needed my magnet. And whoever knows me knows how important this is for me. And this is not the first time when we are in a crisis and I sacrifice both comfort and mental health for a magnet, by the way. But more about this maybe another time. So he was kind of shocked that even in this moment, when we may end up sleeping on an island we didn't intend to, I still prioritize my magnet. At the same time, you know who you travel with. You know I do that. You agreed to be with me despite of those things. So you gotta deal with it. But anyway, I ran ahead like a maniac, and let me tell you something. Sprinting after 10 plus miles hike in the heat and fighting altitude sickness is not a good time to sprint and be in a hurry. I'm telling you, I was running out of breath. I was giving up almost. But the thought of the magnet made me go on. And once I got there, I was just praying to God that they only had one kind. Otherwise, I knew I was gonna waste time making a decision because I know myself very well. I take my magnet collection very seriously, and I tend to be very indecisive of which magnet to buy. So I got there. I had literally a few seconds to take a look, pick, pay, and leave. And I had a few seconds of wondering, and then I saw my boyfriend getting closer, and I'm like, I promised him that I will be out of here by the time he reaches the spot. So I didn't want to waste more time because it was already ridiculous enough. So I grabbed the one I thought I liked the best, paid, and got out of the store right when he approached. Like, I was so proud of myself. Just felt like, I don't know, it was a very weird feeling, and I'm sure he was like, this psychopath. So after another few minutes running down the goddamn stairs, we arrived at the port. It was clear that there were no more boats leaving for Copacabana, and the only option was to take a private one, which came with the price of 500 Bolivianos, about 74 US dollars. And this was an okay price for American dollars. Plus, the fact that we were desperate, whatever, just take us home. So we just talked to one of the boat drivers, one of the captains. We kind of arranged the price, and since we had nowhere to rush for anymore, we just asked him, can we at least use the restroom before we get on, because we were going to be on the boat for about 2 hours. He was like, sure. So I come back from the bathroom, and I see my boyfriend talking to a group of people, and he's like, hey, these guys got a private boat to Copacabana already. They offered us to join them if their captain agrees, and he can probably give us a better price. And I was like, damn, that's kind of awesome. Like, what a nice group of people. We talked a little bit, and I heard their accent, and I knew they were from the same part of Europe where I come from. So I just asked, where are you guys from? Serbia was the answer, and I immediately felt better because Bulgarians and Serbians go a long way back, and we have always kind of liked each other as nationalities, I would say. I consider Serbians like super nice people, and something was telling me that things will work out now. It wasn't a coincidence that the people we met at the port were not from somewhere else, but from my part of the world, They asked their captain, and he agreed to let us on the boat for 200 Bolivianos both, more than twice cheaper than what the first guy was offering us. And we were kind of stoked and relieved, mostly because we knew we didn't have to stay on the island and wait for the next morning to leave. The first boat driver, the first captain, wasn't happy at all. I could tell. He was probably like, these stupid tourists who missed the boat will now agree to anything. And then we made friends unexpectedly out of nowhere and joined them. He was giving us bad looks, but sorry bro, it's just a business, You get the better offer, you switch. And once we got on the boat, we started talking to the Serbian gang, and the ride turned out to be super nice, and the time just passed so fast. We just kept talking and didn't even feel how 2 hours passed. We were discussing budget traveling, who was going where and who was coming from where. It was great. I once again realized how everything happens for a reason, and how without these, little or bigger hiccups, we won't have the cool stories to tell after. While we were talking with the Serbian group, it turned out that the very next day, we were on the same bus together back to La Paz from Copacabana. It was like, damn, what a small world. Not enough that we found each other in a situation that wasn't supposed to happen to any of us. Like, we all ended up needing private boats because we all missed the last boat. But now we were also on the same bus, which literally we were sitting behind each other. And that's one of the things I love about traveling the most, talking to people and learning about their experiences, especially at times where plans don't go as we thought they would. Once we arrived in Copacabana, we said bye, see you tomorrow to the Serbian group, and we went to have a nice and relaxing rest of the night. Chilled and did a summary of our fun and unplanned afternoon. And we also met a guy from Nigeria who we spent maybe an hour talking to. He was very nice. And we were so tired, you guys. After all these emotions and all the miles we put on those poor legs, we just wanted to eat and go to bed. It was 11 p.m. in Copacabana, which is 7 p.m. in California, the time that we are used to. And we were in bed. I couldn't be happier. Like, I didn't care what time it was. We even saw a doggy outside wandering around the hotel. And we invited her inside, first for a little bit, but then she didn't want to leave, and we felt so bad. She was super comfortable, and she ended up spending the whole night with us on the bed. And I hope the Las Olas hotel staff, don't really hear that, because we may get in trouble. I'm not even sure if dogs are allowed, but you know what? Even if we get fined, I don't care. I'll gladly pay any dog energy I'll take, so it will be worth it. And yeah, I think this was enough experiences, stories, and emotions for one episode. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you laughed. I hope you felt better for yourself. And hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. I will talk to you guys soon. And until then, bon voyage!